Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Discovery and watched the massive space station grow larger in the viewscreen. The structure was unlike anything humans had ever built. It stretched for miles in every direction, with gleaming metal towers that twisted and curved in impossible ways. Lights flickered across its surface like stars, and ships from a dozen different worlds moved around it like busy insects. "We're really doing this," said Dr. Lisa Bennett from her station nearby. She was the ship's chief science officer and had spent the last 3 years studying everything they knew about alien life. Her hands shook slightly as she checked her instruments for the 100th time that morning. "First contact with an entire galactic government," added Sam Parker from the communications station. He was younger than the other two, but had proven himself many times during their journey. History in the making. Jake nodded, but kept his eyes on the screen. Humanity had been working toward this moment for 50 years. Ever since they detected the first alien signals, every scientist and diplomat on Earth had dreamed of this day. The Galactic Council had finally agreed to meet with them. After decades of sending messages into space, the aliens had responded. They wanted to talk. The journey from Earth had taken 6 months using humanity's fastest ship. The Discovery carried the best crew Earth could provide. Besides Jake, Lisa, and Sam, there were 30 other specialists aboard. Linguists, scientists, engineers, and diplomats. Everyone who might be needed to make humanity's first impression on the galaxy a good one. "Incoming transmission," Sam announced. "They're giving us docking instructions." The voice that came through the speakers was strange. It sounded like crystal chimes mixed with static, but the translation computers worked perfectly. "Human vessel. Discovery. Proceed to docking bay 7 Alpha 9. You will be met by escort personnel upon arrival." "Acknowledged," Jake replied. Discovery proceeding to docking bay 7 Alpha 9. As they moved closer to the station, Lisa pointed out details she had only read about in reports. "Those ships with the blue hulls belong to the Vorthik. They're the crystal people, and see those sleek silver ones? Those are Nereid vessels. They live underwater on their own planet." The docking process was smooth. The station's technology was far ahead of anything humans had developed, but the basic principles were the same. Magnetic clamps secured the Discovery to the dock, and airlocks connected with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. "Environment reads as safe," Lisa reported. "Oxygen levels are actually higher than Earth normal. Temperature is comfortable." Jake straightened his formal uniform and checked his appearance one last time. "Remember, everyone, we're representing all of humanity today. Let's make them glad they invited us." The airlock opened, and 3 figures waited on the other side. Jake had studied pictures of different alien species, but seeing them in person was still overwhelming. The first was clearly Vorthik, a tall being that looked like it was carved from living crystal. Light moved through its body in slow, beautiful patterns. The second was shorter and covered in smooth blue-green skin, with large eyes adapted for underwater life. The third looked almost human, except for 6 arms and skin that shifted colors as Jake watched. "Welcome to Station Unity," the crystal being said. Its voice had the same chiming quality they had heard over the radio. "I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthik Collective. These are my colleagues, Counselor Merlin of the Nereid Commonwealth and Delegate 6 Arms Dancing of the Chromatid Union." "Thank you for having us," Jake replied with a formal bow. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel Discovery. These are my senior officers, Dr. Lisa Bennett and communications specialist Sam Parker. Please follow us," Zethkar said. "The Council is eager to meet with your species." They walked through corridors that were clearly designed for many different types of beings. The ceilings were high enough for the tallest species, while walkways at different levels accommodated shorter ones. The walls showed beautiful patterns that seemed to move and change as they passed. "How many species are part of the council?" Lisa asked as they walked. 12 primary members, Merlin answered. Her voice was soft and fluid, like water flowing over stones. "We have maintained peaceful cooperation for over 3,000 of your years." Sam whistled softly. 3,000 years of peace. That's impressive. Six arms dancing made a sound that might have been laughter. Peace requires understanding. Understanding requires communication. Communication requires trust. They entered. A vast chamber with a curved ceiling that showed what looked like real stars. 12 different seating areas were arranged in a circle, each designed for a different type of being. Most were occupied by aliens Jake recognized from his studies, though several species were completely new to him. At the center of the circle stood a platform with 3 chairs clearly meant for humans. Jake felt a moment of pride that they had been given such an honored position. "Humans of Earth," announced a deep voice from across the chamber. A massive being with multiple tentacles and skin, like polished stone, rose from one of the seating areas. "I am Chief Counselor Morden of the Nereid Republic. On behalf of the Galactic Council, we welcome you to Station Unity." Jake stepped forward and bowed again. "Thank you, Chief Counselor. We are honored to be here and grateful for this opportunity to join the galactic community." A moment of silence passed. Then Morden spoke again, and his words changed everything. "We regret to inform you that your application for council membership has been denied." Jake felt his heart stop. Lisa gasped audibly behind him. Sam stepped forward as if to protest, but Jake held up a hand to stop him. "May I ask why?" Jake said carefully. Zethkar rose from his seating area, light pulsing through his crystal body in patterns that seemed agitated. "After extensive analysis of your species' neural patterns and cognitive capabilities, the Council has reached a unanimous decision. The human mind has been classified as a class of prohibited weapon." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "A weapon? How could the human mind be a weapon?" "You are too dangerous to be allowed into galactic society," Morden continued. "Your species thinks in ways that threaten the safety and stability of all civilized worlds." The emergency session in the White House Situation Room had been going for 6 hours straight. President Helen Carter sat at the head of the long table, her face showing the strain of the worst crisis humanity had ever faced. Around her sat the brightest minds on Earth, all trying to understand how their greatest achievement had become their greatest threat. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," President Carter said, rubbing her tired eyes. "The aliens think our ability to imagine things makes us dangerous?" Dr. Alex Stone nodded grimly from his seat across the table. He was Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, though that expertise felt useless now. "According to the data Captain Morrison transmitted before communications were cut off, yes. The Galactic Council operates on something they call reality-based cognition. They can only think about things that actually exist or have actually happened." General Paul Richards leaned forward, his military uniform crisp despite the long hours. "Explain that in simple terms, Doctor." "Think of it this way," Alex said, pulling up a holographic display. "When we see a knife, we immediately imagine all the things it could be used for. Cutting food, opening packages, or unfortunately, hurting someone. We don't plan to hurt anyone, but our minds automatically consider the possibility. To us, this is normal thinking, but not to them." The President said, "Exactly. When an alien sees a knife, they see only what it's currently being used for. If it's cutting bread, that's all they can think about. They cannot imagine it being used for anything else, unless they actually see it happen." Secretary of Defense Maria Lopez spoke up from the far end of the table. "How is that even possible? How do they plan for the future if they can't imagine what might happen. Alex brought up another display showing alien brain scans. Their neural pathways are incredibly efficient, but completely rigid. They process information in fixed patterns that have been established over millions of years of evolution. They plan for the future by following predetermined protocols based on past experiences. They've never needed to imagine new scenarios because their environments have been stable for so long. President Carter stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. So when they studied our brains and found that we constantly imagine things that don't exist, they saw it as evidence that we're planning to make those things real. It's worse than that, Alex continued. I've been analyzing the intercepted communications from their private discussions. They discovered that humans regularly create detailed scenarios involving violence, conquest, and destruction. Not because we want these things to happen, but because imagination doesn't have moral boundaries. General Richards frowned. What kind of scenarios? Every kind you can think of, Alex replied. Our movies show alien invasions, galactic wars, genocides. Our video games let players conquer entire civilizations. Our books describe every possible way to destroy planets or enslave populations. To us, these are entertainment or thought experiments. To them, these are strategic planning documents. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Rachel Torres, the president's science advisor, finally spoke. They think we're constantly planning their destruction because we've imagined their destruction. Exactly. And since they can't imagine scenarios that don't exist, they can't understand the difference between thinking about something and planning to do it. President Carter returned to her seat. What about our own people? How are they taking the news? General. Richards consulted his tablet. Panic in major cities. The stock markets have crashed. Religious leaders are calling it everything from divine judgment to the end times. And the conspiracy theorists are having a field day. Social media is going crazy, added Maria Lopez. Half the population thinks this is a hoax, and the other half is demanding we prepare for war. Dr. Alex Stone pulled up another display showing news footage from around the world. Crowds gathered in city centers, some praying, others protesting, many just standing and staring at the sky as if expecting alien ships to appear at any moment. The worst part is that the aliens aren't entirely wrong, Alex said quietly. Human imagination really is dangerous in the right circumstances. Our ability to envision and plan for scenarios that have never happened is exactly how we've survived and thrived as a species. It's how we developed agriculture, built cities, created technology, and eventually reached space. But it's also how we created weapons of mass destruction, General Richards added. Nuclear bombs, biological weapons, cyber warfare. We imagined these things into existence. President Carter nodded slowly. So our greatest strength really could be seen as our greatest threat. There's more, Alex continued. I've been analyzing their decision-making process. The Council has dealt with 3 other species that they classified as cognitive threats over the past millennium. The first was relocated to a remote sector and forbidden from developing space travel. The second was quarantined on their home, planet under constant surveillance. The third. What happened to the third? The president asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. They were eliminated, completely. The council decided they were too dangerous to exist. The room went silent again. Outside the window, Washington, D.C. continued its normal rhythm, unaware that humanity might have only days left before facing the same fate. Dr. Rachel Torres finally broke the silence. Is there any way to communicate with them? To explain that, we can control our imagination. Captain Morrison is still trying, Alex replied. But every attempt to explain human thinking only makes things worse. When he suggested alternative solutions to their concerns, they interpreted it as evidence of human deception. After all, How can someone propose solutions to problems that don't exist unless they're planning to create those problems? General. Richard stood and began pacing. What about our military capabilities? If they decide we're too dangerous and attack, can we defend ourselves? Against a civilization that's been spacefaring for thousands of years? Maria Lopez shook her head. Our best weapons are barely adequate for fighting other humans, let alone aliens with technology we can barely comprehend. President Carter looked around the room at the grim faces. Options, I need options. We could try to demonstrate that human imagination is constructive rather than destructive, suggested Dr. Torres. Show them our art, our literature, our dreams. For the future. That might backfire, Alex warned. They've already seen our creative works. To them, science fiction is a catalog of potential threats, and fantasy is evidence of mental instability. What about surrendering our space capabilities? General Richards suggested reluctantly. Prove we're not a threat by giving up our ability to reach them. They might interpret that as tactical deception, Alex replied. Besides, the damage is already done. They know what the human mind is capable of. Limiting our technology won't. Change our fundamental nature. President Carter stood again and walked to a map of the world on the wall. 7 billion people going about their daily lives, unaware that their very ability to dream and imagine had marked them for potential extinction. There has to be something, she said. Some way to make them understand that imagination without action is not a threat. Actually, Alex said slowly, there might be one approach we haven't considered. The very thing that makes them afraid of us might also be the key to solving this crisis. Explain. They can't imagine solutions to problems they've never encountered before, but we can. If we can find a way to use our imagination to benefit them rather than threaten them, we might be able to change their minds. How? Alex pulled up a new display showing the galaxy's political structure. The Council has maintained peace for 3,000 years, but that doesn't mean they don't have problems. According to our intelligence, they face resource disputes, territorial conflicts, and several long-standing issues they haven't been able to resolve. Because they can only think in established patterns, Dr. Torres said, catching on. They can't imagine new solutions. Exactly. If we could show them that human imagination can solve their problems rather than create new ones, we might convince them that we're worth the risk. President Carter turned back to the room. It's not much of a plan, but it's better than waiting for them to destroy us. Get me a direct line to Captain Morrison. It's time to show the galaxy what the human mind can really do. D.I. Lisa Bennett stared at the alien brain scans displayed on her workstation aboard the Discovery. The ship had been moved to a quarantine dock on the far side of Station Unity, but the aliens had at least allowed her to continue her research. What she was seeing in the data made her heart race with both excitement and fear. Sam, you need to look at this, she called to her colleague across the small library they had set up. Sam Parker floated over in the low-gravity section of the ship. The aliens had been polite enough to provide detailed brain scans of all 12 council species, probably thinking it would help humans understand why they were so dangerous. Instead, it was revealing something incredible about the nature of intelligence itself. What am I looking at? Sam asked, studying the colorful patterns on the screen. Neural pathway structures, Lisa explained, pointing to different sections of the display. Each alien species shows remarkable specialization. Look at the Vorthic crystal people. Their brains are like living computers, perfectly organized for mathematical calculations and logical processing. Every thought follows precise, predictable patterns. She switched to another scan. And here are the Nereid aquatic people. There. Neural structure is optimized for environmental adaptation and fluid thinking, but still within rigid boundaries. They can adjust to changing water conditions instantly, but they can't imagine environments that don't actually exist. Sam studied the patterns carefully. He had been trained in military strategy and was used to analyzing complex data, but this was unlike anything he had seen before. They're all so organized, like looking at a perfect machine. Exactly. Now look at this. Lisa brought up a human brain scan next to the alien ones. The difference was shocking. Where the alien brains showed neat, organized patterns, the human brain looked like controlled chaos. Neural pathways twisted and connected in seemingly random ways, with new connections forming and dissolving constantly. We look broken compared to them, Sam said. Or they look limited compared to us, Lisa replied. Every alien species we've seen has neural pathways that follow the same basic pattern. Stimulus comes in, it's processed through established channels, and produces a predictable response. They're incredibly efficient at what they do, but they can only do what they've evolved to do. She highlighted different sections of the human brain scan, but look at us. Our neural pathways are constantly forming new connections. We can take completely unrelated concepts and link them together. We can process information that has no basis in reality and treat it as if it were real. We can learn from experiences we've never had. Sam was beginning to understand. That's why they're scared of us. Their brains work like sophisticated programs, but ours work like ... like creative engines, Lisa finished. They follow rules. We break them and make new ones. Captain Jake Morrison entered the lab at that moment, looking exhausted from another failed diplomatic session with the Council. Any progress on understanding why they think we're weapons? Lisa turned to face him, her eyes bright with discovery. Jake, I think I know why they're terrified of us. And it's not just about imagination. It's about adaptation. She brought up a new display showing evolutionary timelines. Every species in the Galactic Council evolved on worlds with stable environments. Their home planets have remained basically unchanged for millions of years. They developed intelligence to master their specific environments, and then they stopped evolving. Stopped evolving? Jake asked. Their neural structures became fixed, perfect for their worlds, but unable to change. They achieved what they needed, and then stayed there. It's actually quite efficient. Sam was studying the timeline data, but Earth was different. Completely different, Lisa confirmed. Earth went through ice ages, volcanic periods, climate changes, mass extinctions. Every few thousand years, our environment changed dramatically. Species that couldn't adapt went extinct. So we evolved to be adaptable, Jake said. More than that, we evolved to be imaginative. Think about it. During an ice age, the humans who survived weren't the ones who were best adapted to the current environment. They were the ones who could imagine what the environment might become and prepare for it. Lisa pulled up more data showing human evolutionary development. We developed the ability to think about scenarios that didn't exist yet. We imagined warmer climates and colder ones. We imagined different food sources and different threats. Our survival depended on our ability to prepare for things that might never happen. That's why we can create fiction, Sam said, understanding dawning on his face. We needed to be able to think about unreal situations to survive real ones. Exactly. And it's also why we're so good at strategy and problem solving. We can imagine what our enemies might do before they do it. We can envision problems before they occur and create solutions before we need them. Jake sat down heavily in a nearby chair. So our evolutionary advantage makes us appear unpredictable and dangerous to species that think in fixed patterns. It's worse than that, Lisa continued. I've been analyzing their historical records. The Council has maintained peace for 3,000 years, but not because they're naturally peaceful. It's because their rigid thinking makes war almost impossible. How? So, think about it. War requires the ability to imagine what your enemy might do and plan accordingly. It requires adapting to changing situations and creating new strategies. None of the council species can do that effectively. Sam was pacing now, his strategic mind working through the implications. They fight by following established protocols, predetermined battle plans based on past conflicts. That works fine when you're fighting other species that think the same way, but against humans, ... We would be unpredictable, Jake finished. We could imagine strategies they never would, adapt their tactics in real time, and create solutions they couldn't anticipate. Exactly. From their perspective, we're not just dangerous because we can imagine violence. We're dangerous because we could actually implement it in ways they couldn't defend against. Lisa brought up one more display, this one showing communication patterns between council species. Look at this. Their diplomatic solutions to conflicts follow the same rigid patterns as their thinking. They have established protocols for resource, disputes, territorial conflicts, and trade disagreements. These protocols have worked for thousands of years. But they can't imagine new problems or new solutions, Sam said. Right. And lately, they've been facing issues their protocols can't handle. Resource depletion in the outer systems, territorial. Disputes involving three-way conflicts instead of two-way ones, and new trade routes that don't fit their established patterns. Jake leaned forward, interested. Problems that require creative thinking to solve. Problems that require human thinking to solve, Lisa corrected. Jake, what if we've been approaching this all wrong? What if instead of trying to convince them we're not dangerous, we show them that our danger can be beneficial? I'm not following. They're right to be afraid of us. We are dangerous in the sense that we can think in ways they can't and do things they can't predict. But that same ability that makes us dangerous also makes us capable of solving problems they can't solve. Sam was nodding enthusiastically. Like how human generals won battles by doing the unexpected. Our unpredictability was exactly what made us effective. So instead of denying that we're dangerous, Jake said slowly, we convince them that our danger is exactly what they need. Think about it, Lisa continued. They've had the same problems for decades, maybe centuries, because they can only think about them in the same old ways. But we could look at their problems with fresh eyes and imagine solutions they never could. It's risky, Sam warned. If we fail to solve their problems, we just reinforce their belief they were dangerously unpredictable. And if we succeed, too well, they might decide we're even more dangerous than they thought, Jake added. Lisa looked at both of them seriously. It's a risk either way. But right now, they're planning to eliminate us because they think we're too dangerous to exist. At least this way, we have a chance to prove that our danger has value. Jake stood up and moved to the window overlooking the alien station. Hundreds of ships moved in orderly patterns around the massive structure, following routes that had probably been established centuries ago. Everything was predictable, safe, and efficient. All right, he said finally. Let's show them what human thinking can do. But we need to be smart about this. If we're going to convince them that chaos can be constructive, we need to do it in a way they can understand. I have some ideas about that, Lisa said with a smile. It's time to put the human imagination to work. The intercepted transmission crackled through the Discovery's communication system at 0300 ship time. Sam Parker had been monitoring alien frequencies around the clock, and what he heard made his blood run cold. He immediately contacted Captain Morrison and Dr. Bennett, calling them to the bridge despite the early hour. Play it again, Jake said, rubbing sleep from his eyes as he studied the translation scrolling across the screen. The voice belonged to Fleet Admiral Valesh of the Drakmor military caste, a species known for their rigid adherence to protocol and overwhelming firepower. Council members, The human threat grows with each passing cycle. Their vessel remains in our space, their minds continue to function, and their dangerous thoughts multiply. I propose immediate implementation of Containment Protocol 7. Dr. Bennett felt her stomach drop. Protocol 7. I've read about that. In their historical records. What is it? Jake asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Complete sterilization of a planetary system deemed too dangerous for galactic security, she replied quietly. They've used it twice before. Both times, entire civilizations were eliminated. The transmission continued as Chief Counselor Mordown responded. Admiral Valesh, such action requires unanimous council approval. The humans have not yet committed any aggressive acts. With respect, Counselor, we cannot wait for aggressive acts when dealing with a species capable of imagining unlimited scenarios for galactic destruction. Their minds are weapons of mass conception. Every moment we delay gives them more time to formulate plans against us. Sam paused the recording and looked at his companions. There's more. They've been analyzing everything we've said and done since we arrived. Every conversation, every casual comment, every attempt at diplomacy. They're interpreting all of it as evidence of hostile intent. How? Jake asked. Remember yesterday when I mentioned that humans had written stories about galactic conquest? They recorded that. When Dr. Bennett suggested alternative approaches to resource allocation, they see that as evidence we're already planning to take their resources. When you proposed compromise solutions, they think that proves we're trying to manipulate them. Lisa sank into a chair. Everything we say just makes it worse. Our ability to think of alternative solutions looks like deception to them. Our creativity looks like scheming. It gets worse, Sam continued, restarting the recording. A new voice joined the conversation, crystalline and precise. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthik spoke with mathematical certainty. I have completed analysis of human entertainment media intercepted from their planet. The results are disturbing beyond calculation. Jake grimaced. He knew what was coming. In the past century alone, humans have created 47,293 fictional scenarios involving galactic warfare. They have imagined 12,847 different methods for conquering alien civilizations. They have developed 8,234 theoretical technologies for planetary destruction. They have conceived 15,672 strategies for enslaving other species. The council chamber fell silent for a moment before Zethkar continued. These are not random thoughts. These are detailed strategic documents. Humans have systematically imagined every possible way to dominate, destroy, or subjugate the galaxy. But they're just stories, Jake said to the empty bridge, knowing no one could hear him. Another voice joined the conversation, this one flowing like water. Counselor Merlin of the Nereid spoke with deep concern. The psychological profiles are equally troubling. Human children are exposed to these violent fantasies from an early age. They participate in simulated conflicts through games that teach tactical thinking and strategic planning. Their educational system actively encourages the development of aggressive imagination. Sam stopped the recording again. They've been monitoring our video games, our movies, our books. Everything we consider entertainment, they see as military training. This is insane, Jake muttered. They think playing chess makes us dangerous strategists. To beings who can't imagine hypothetical scenarios, strategy games would seem like actual preparation for war, Lisa pointed out. They don't understand the difference between simulation and reality because their minds can't create simulations. The recording continued with more damning evidence. Species after species presented their analysis of human culture, each finding new reasons to fear humanity's imaginative capabilities. The insectoid Krell-Tehid had calculated that human fiction contained enough theoretical weapons designs to destroy the galaxy 17 times over. The gaseous ethereal collective was terrified by human concepts of spiritual warfare and psychological manipulation. Finally, Fleet Admiral Valish spoke again. The evidence is overwhelming. The human species represents an existential threat to galactic civilization. I call for an immediate vote on Containment Protocol 7. Seconded, came several voices at once. Chief Counselor Morden's response carried the weight of inevitability. Very well. We will convene for a formal vote in 7 Galactic Standard Days. All members must be present. The fate of the human species will be decided by unanimous council decision as required by our ancient laws. The transmission ended, leaving the 3 humans in stunned silence. 7 days. Less than a week before the galaxy decided whether humanity deserved to exist. We need to contact Earth immediately, Jake said, but Sam was already shaking his head. They've jammed all our long-range communications. We can receive their transmissions, but we can't send anything back. As far as Earth knows, we are still in diplomatic negotiations. Lisa stood and began pacing, her scientific mind working through possibilities. 7 days. What can we possibly do in 7 days to change their minds? Maybe we should focus on escape, Sam suggested. Try to get back to Earth and warn them what's coming. With what? Our ship is fast, but not nearly fast enough to outrun a galactic military fleet. And even if we could warn Earth, what could they do? Our entire Space Force consists of maybe 50 ships, and none of them are designed for real combat. Jake moved to the view screen, showing Station Unity in the distance. The massive structure bustled with activity as ships from all 12 Council species moved in their precise, orderly patterns. Everything was so organized, so predictable, so efficient. And somewhere in those gleaming corridors, beings were calmly planning the extinction of his entire species. There has to be something, he said, some way to reach them. Maybe there is, Lisa said slowly, but it's going to require us to do exactly what they're afraid of. Meaning, we need to use our imagination, not to threaten them, but to solve a problem they can't solve themselves. Sam looked skeptical. What kind of problem? Lisa pulled up the data she had been analyzing for days. Remember what I told you about their rigid thinking? They've maintained peace for 3,000 years by following established protocols. But protocols only work when you're dealing with familiar situations. She highlighted several sections of the galactic political data. Look at this. The Outer Rim territories are facing resource depletion that doesn't fit any of their established patterns. The Crystalline Consortium and the Aquatic Alliance have a territorial dispute that involves 3 different star systems and 4 different species. The trade routes through the spiral arm have been disrupted by natural phenomena that their computers can't predict. Problems they can't solve, Jake said, beginning to understand. Problems they can't even properly analyze because their solutions require thinking outside established parameters. They need someone who can imagine new approaches, create novel solutions, and adapt to changing circumstances. They need human thinking, Sam added. Exactly. But we can't just tell them that. We need to prove it. We need to solve one of their unsolvable problems using the very cognitive abilities they fear most. Jake considered this carefully. It's incredibly risky. If we fail, we just confirm that human unpredictability is dangerous. If we succeed too dramatically, they might decide we're even more threatening than they thought. And we only have 7 days, Sam pointed out. 6 days, 18 hours, and 43 minutes, Lisa corrected, checking the countdown she had started. But I think it's our only chance. Jake looked out at the alien station again, trying to imagine what it would be like to think the way they did, to be brilliant and efficient, but limited to established patterns, to be capable of maintaining perfect order, but unable to create new solutions. All right, he said finally. If we're going to convince them that dangerous thinking can be beneficial thinking, we need to choose our target carefully. Which problem should we try to solve? Lisa smiled grimly. I have just the one. It's been unsolved for over 200 years. It affects 6 different species, and their best minds have tried every conventional approach without success. What is it? The Meridian Crisis. A trade route collapse that's been slowly strangling the galactic economy. They've been trying to fix it using traditional methods, but the problem requires thinking they can't do. And you think we can solve it? I think if we can't solve it, humanity doesn't deserve to survive what's coming. Dr. Lisa Bennett had not slept in 36 hours. Her workspace aboard the Discovery looked like a hurricane had hit it, with data displays covering every available surface and holographic models floating in the air around her chair. She was completely absorbed in the most complex problem-solving exercise of her life, and she was running out of time. Tell me about the Meridian Crisis again, Sam Parker said as he brought her another cup of coffee. He had appointed himself her assistant and coffee supplier, recognizing that everything depended on what she could accomplish in the next few days. It started 212 years ago, Lisa replied without looking up from her calculations. The Meridian Trade Corridor was the galaxy's primary shipping route. It connected all 12 Council worlds through a series of stable wormhole gates that had existed naturally for millions of years. She gestured to a 3-dimensional map showing the galaxy with bright lines connecting different star systems. Then something happened. The wormholes began destabilizing. Not all at once, but gradually. One by one, the gates started fluctuating, becoming unreliable, and eventually collapsing completely. What caused it? That's what nobody can figure out. The Council's best scientists have studied it for centuries. They've tried every conventional approach. Gravitational stabilizers, quantum field generators, temporal anchors. Nothing works. Sam studied the map more carefully. What makes this problem so difficult? The wormholes are natural phenomena, not artificial constructs. They're incredibly complex quantum structures that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. And math alone involves equations that most species can't even comprehend, let alone solve. Captain Jake Morrison entered the workspace, looking as tired as the rest of them. Any progress? Actually, yes, Lisa said, and for the first time in days, she smiled. I think I know why the Council can't solve this problem. Why? Because they're trying to fix the wormholes instead of understanding them. She brought up a new display showing the failed attempts by various Council species over the years. Look at this. Every single approach has been focused on stopping the destabilization or reversing it. They see a problem and try to eliminate it using established scientific methods. That makes sense, Sam said. If something is breaking, you try to fix it. But what if it's not actually breaking? What if it's changing? Jake leaned forward, interested. Changing how? Lisa pulled up her latest analysis, showing energy patterns that swirled and shifted in complex ways. I've been looking at this from a completely different angle. Instead of seeing the destabilization as damage to be repaired, I've been treating it as information to be decoded. Information about what? About why the wormholes exist in the first place. She highlighted specific patterns in the data. Natural wormholes don't just appear randomly. They form when specific conditions exist in space-time. The Council has always assumed these wormholes were permanent fixtures. But what if they're not? What if they're part of a larger cycle that nobody has recognized? Sam was beginning to follow her logic. A cycle that takes longer than any single species has been observing. Exactly. The Council species have been spacefaring for thousands of years, but geological and cosmic processes operate on much longer timescales. What if the meridian corridor is supposed to change? What if the current destabilization is actually the beginning of a transformation into something new? Jake studied the swirling patterns on the display. So instead of trying to stop the change, we should be trying to understand where it's leading. Right, and that requires thinking that the Council species can't do. They can analyze existing data and follow established patterns, but they can't imagine what doesn't exist yet. Lisa brought up another display showing her theoretical models. I've been using human pattern recognition to look for connections the Council missed. Our brains are designed to find meaningful patterns in seemingly random data. It's how our ancestors survived by recognizing dangerous situations before they became obvious. What kind of patterns? Sam asked. Cyclical ones. The destabilization isn't random. It's following a specific sequence that repeats every 47.3 galactic standard years. The Council never noticed because their record-keeping systems are designed to track linear cause and effect relationships, not cyclical patterns that extend beyond their observation periods. She highlighted specific sections of her analysis. But if you look at the data from a cyclical perspective, everything makes sense. The wormholes aren't collapsing. They're relocating. Relocating? The quantum anchors that maintain the wormholes are shifting position in higher dimensional space. From our three-dimensional perspective, it looks like they're disappearing, but they're actually moving to new coordinates. Jake was trying to follow the complex physics. So the trade route isn't being destroyed, it's being rerouted, exactly. And I think I know where it's going. Lisa brought up a new map showing projected wormhole positions based on her cyclical analysis. The pattern was elegant and logical, connecting the same 12 worlds, but through different paths that would be more efficient than the old routes. New configuration will actually be superior to the old one, she continued. Shorter travel times, more stable connections, and better resource distribution. But only if the transition is allowed to complete naturally. How long will that take? Sam asked. Based on my calculations, about 18 more galactic standard years. Jake whistled softly. 18 years of disrupted trade. No wonder the Council is desperate to find a solution. But here's the interesting part, Lisa said, pulling up more data. The transition can be accelerated. How? By working with the natural process instead of against it. Instead of trying to stabilize the old wormholes, we help them transition to their new positions. We use the destabilization energy to power the relocation instead of fighting it. Sam was shaking his head in amazement. You're talking about intentionally destabilizing the remaining wormholes. In a controlled manner, yes. Guide the quantum anchors to their new positions, using the energy that's already destabilizing them. It's like using a river's current to power a water wheel instead of trying to dam the river. And this would work? Jake asked. According to my models, yes. The transition could be completed in 6 months instead of 18 years. The new trade routes would be operational with minimal disruption to galactic commerce. Jake stood and began pacing, his mind working through the implications. This is exactly the kind of solution they need. Creative, unconventional, and beneficial to everyone involved. But will they accept it? Sam asked. You're essentially asking them to trust human thinking over 2 centuries of their own scientific analysis. More than that, Lisa added, I'm asking them to intentionally make the problem worse in the short term to achieve a better long-term solution. That kind of thinking goes against every instinct they have, which is exactly why they need us, Jake said. Their rigid thinking prevents them from seeing solutions that require temporary disruption or unconventional approaches. Lisa saved her analysis and turned to face both men. There's one more thing. This solution doesn't just solve the Meridian crisis. It demonstrates something important about human cognitive abilities. What's that? Pattern recognition across extended timescales. creative problem-solving under pressure, and the ability to envision beneficial outcomes from apparently destructive processes. All the things that make them afraid of us. Sam nodded slowly. So, if we can convince them to try your solution and it works, we prove that human imagination can be constructive rather than destructive. And if it doesn't work, Jake asked. Then we confirm their worst fears about our unpredictability, Lisa replied honestly. But at least we'll have tried. Jake moved to the communication station. How do we present this to them? They're not exactly in a listening mood right now. We request a formal hearing, Lisa said. Present the solution as a gift to the galactic community. Show them that human thinking can benefit everyone, not just humans. They'll be suspicious, Sam warned. Why would we help them solve their problems when they're planning to eliminate us? Because that's what humans do, Jake said with a slight smile. We solve problems, even when it's not in our immediate self-interest. It's part of what makes us human. And if we're right about this, Lisa added, it might be exactly what saves us. Jake looked at both of his colleagues, these brilliant humans who had spent days using their dangerous imaginations to help rather than harm. All right. Let's show the galaxy what human thinking can really accomplish. Time to request an audience with the council. How long do we have left? Sam asked. 4 days, 7 hours, and 16 minutes, Lisa replied without hesitation. Then we better make this count. A council chamber had never seen anything like it. For the first time in recorded history, the formal session was being broadcast live to every world in the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as the three humans stood on the central platform, surrounded by representatives of 12 species who held the power to decide their fate. Captain Jake Morrison stepped forward as Chief Counselor Mordon called the session to order. The massive Nereid's tentacles moved in patterns that indicated formal authority and grave responsibility. Humans of Earth, Mordon announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. You have requested this hearing with 18 galactic standard hours remaining before the Council votes on your species' fate. You claim to possess information relevant to galactic security. Present your case. Jake bowed respectfully and looked around the circular chamber at the assembled aliens. Each species sat in their specialized seating areas, their attention focused completely on the small group of humans at the center. The weight of representing all humanity pressed down on his shoulders. Honored counselors, he began, we understand your fears about human cognitive abilities. You are right to be concerned. The human mind is indeed dangerous in ways you have never encountered before. A ripple of surprise went through the chamber. Fleet Admiral Valesh of the Drakmor leaned forward aggressively, his armored bulk grinding against his seat. So you admit you are a threat to galactic peace? We admit we are different, Jake continued calmly. But difference does not automatically equal threat. The same abilities that allow humans to imagine destruction also allow us to imagine creation. The same minds that can conceive of war can also conceive of solutions to problems that have plagued the galaxy for centuries. Ambassador Zethkar's crystal body pulsed with skeptical light patterns. You speak in hypotheticals, human. Present evidence, not philosophy. Dr. Lisa Bennett stepped forward, her arms full of data tablets and projection devices. Honored counselors, with your permission, I would like to present a solution to the Meridian crisis. The chamber fell silent. The Meridian crisis had been the galaxy's most persistent unsolved problem for over 2 centuries. Every species had tried to fix it using their best science and most advanced technology. All had failed. Impossible, muttered Counselor Six Arms Dancing of the Chromatid Union. Our finest minds have worked on this problem for generations. And that, Lisa said gently, is exactly why they could not solve it. She activated her projection devices, filling the air above the chamber with 3-dimensional models of the Failing wormhole network. The Meridian Corridor appeared in all its complex glory, showing the destabilization patterns that had puzzled scientists for centuries. Your scientists approached this as a repair problem, Lisa explained. Something was broken and needed to be fixed. Every solution focused on stopping or reversing the destabilization. She manipulated the display to show the failed attempts over the years. Gravitational stabilizers, quantum anchors, temporal field generators. All had been tried, all had failed. But what if nothing is actually broken? What if the system is working exactly as it should? New patterns appeared in the display, showing the cyclical nature of the destabilization that no one had recognized before. The seemingly random failures suddenly revealed themselves as part of an elegant, long-term pattern. The wormholes are not collapsing, Lisa announced. They are relocating. Chief Counselor Mordoon's tentacles stilled completely, a sign of intense concentration among his species. Explain. The quantum anchors that maintain the wormholes operate on cosmic timescales that exceed your observation periods. What appears to be destruction is actually transformation. The trade network is evolving into a more efficient configuration. She showed the projected new routes, demonstrating how the relocated wormholes would create shorter, more stable connections between all Council worlds. The transition will complete naturally in 18 years, Lisa continued, but it can be accelerated to 6 months using techniques that work with the natural process instead of against it. The chamber erupted in discussion. Species that had not spoken to each other in years suddenly found themselves debating quantum mechanics and cosmic engineering. The possibility that a 200-year-old crisis might finally have a solution was almost too incredible to believe. Fleet Admiral Valash stood, his voice cutting through the noise. Even if this analysis is correct, how do we know this is not some elaborate deception? How do we know these humans are not simply trying to save themselves by offering false hope? Sam Parker stepped forward for the first time. Because, Admiral, we are about to prove it works. He activated a new display showing real-time sensor data from the Meridian system. D.R. Bennett's calculations predicted that the next natural destabilization event would occur in the tertiary junction in approximately ... He checked his chronometer. 4 minutes and 37 seconds. We have positioned monitoring equipment to observe this event and test our acceleration techniques on a small scale. If our theory is correct, we can guide this single wormhole to its new position immediately instead of waiting years for natural transition. The entire chamber focused on the display showing the tertiary junction. Ancient wormhole gates that had carried traffic between worlds for millennia hung in space. Surrounded by the sophisticated monitoring equipment both human and alien scientists had deployed. 4 minutes, Sam announced. Chief Counselor Mordoon spoke into the tense silence. If this fails, you will have demonstrated that human unpredictability is indeed dangerous to galactic infrastructure. And if it succeeds? Jake asked. Then you will have demonstrated that human thinking can solve problems in ways we never imagined. 3 minutes. Lisa made final adjustments to the equipment, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. The key is recognizing that apparent chaos can contain hidden order. Human minds evolved to find patterns in seemingly random data. We see connections that rigid thinking might miss. 2 minutes. Ambassador Zethkar's crystalline form pulsed rapidly. In all our calculations, we never considered cyclical patterns extending beyond our observation timeframes. Because your thinking is optimized for stability and predictability, Lisa replied. Ours is optimized for adaptation and change. 1 minute. The wormhole gate began to fluctuate exactly as Lisa's models had predicted. Energy readings spiked as quantum anchors started their natural destabilization sequence. 30 seconds. Activating acceleration field. Lisa's equipment came online, working not to stop the destabilization, but to guide it. Instead of fighting the quantum collapse, they channeled its energy toward the wormhole's new destination coordinates. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The wormhole gate disappeared from its ancient position, its quantum signature, scattering across multiple dimensions. For a moment, the sensors showed only empty space. Then, exactly where Lisa's calculations had predicted, a new wormhole gate materialized. Stable, efficient, and already showing optimal energy readings, the chamber exploded in cheers, gasps, and excited discussions in a dozen alien languages. 200 years of failure had been overturned in a matter of minutes by 3 humans using the very cognitive abilities the Council had feared. Chief Counselor Mordon raised his massive form, commanding silence through sheer presence. The demonstration is successful. The humans have solved our greatest unsolved problem using methods we could never have conceived. He paused, looking directly at Jake. You have proven that human imagination can indeed be constructive rather than destructive. But this raises a new question. If you can solve our problems so easily, what prevents you from creating even greater problems just as easily? Jake smiled and gave his answer carefully. Because we can imagine what it would feel like to be you. The simple statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. Jake continued before anyone could respond. Yes, we can imagine conquering the galaxy. But we can also imagine what conquest would feel like from the perspective of the conquered. We can envision destroying civilizations, but we can also envision the suffering that would cause. Our ability to imagine scenarios includes the ability to imagine their consequences and to feel empathy for those affected. Human morality, Sam added, springs from the same imaginative capacity that frightens you. We create ethical frameworks precisely because we can imagine the results of unethical actions. Dr. Lisa Bennett nodded. Our creativity is balanced by our compassion. Our ability to envision destruction is matched by our ability to envision the pain it would cause. Chief Counselor Mordoon was quiet for a long moment, his tentacles moving in patterns that indicated deep thought. Finally, he spoke. The Council will vote as scheduled. But the vote will no longer be on whether to eliminate humanity. It will be on whether to grant full membership to a species whose dangerous gifts might be exactly what the galaxy needs. Fleet. Admiral Valesh stood once more. And if they use those gifts against us? Jake looked directly at the armored alien. Then you will stop us using the same methods you would use against any threat. But Admiral, we hope you will judge us by our actions rather than our capabilities. Today, we chose to help rather than harm. We chose to solve rather than destroy.